The look on my mother's face? Pure shock. Because in that moment, she realized I hadn't just stood up for myself, I'd completely dismantled her world. And honestly, it felt incredible. It was Christmas Eve, just a few weeks earlier. Their house, the one I grew up in, always smelled of cinnamon and pine this time of year. Eleanor, my mother, had decorated it to perfection, a magazine spread come to life. Of course, I was the one who'd spent 6 hours actually doing the decorating, while she sat on the couch, critiquing every single ornament. My sister Chloe arrived first, a cloud of expensive perfume, with her husband David trailing behind, arms full of professionally wrapped gifts. Chloe was always the golden child, the one Eleanor actually wanted. For years younger, but treated like the firstborn. "Vivian, you look tired," she said, air-kissing my cheek. "Are you sleeping okay? Those bags under your eyes are really pronounced." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. Classic Chloe, an insult wrapped in fake concern. David gave me an apologetic smile, but he never contradicted her. No one in this family ever did. My brother Evan showed up an hour later, still in gym clothes. Changing for family was apparently too much effort. At 26, he's the baby of the family and acts it. He works for my father Robert's construction company, works being a generous term. He shows up when he feels like it, leaves early, and still gets a full salary. Robert believes sons deserve opportunities to find themselves. Meanwhile, I've been finding myself in accounting for 11 years, no safety net. But sure, Evan needs more time. The evening kicked off like every other family gathering. Eleanor made a big production of the dinner she'd prepared, though I'd spotted the catering boxes in the garage when I took out the trash. Robert poured whiskey, holding court about his business successes, completely forgetting I'd been doing his company books for a decade, without compensation, because family helps family. Chloe regaled us with stories about her vacation home renovations and her daughter's private school. Evan complained about his CrossFit coach. I sat in my usual corner, nursing a glass of wine, wondering why I still bothered. "Vivian, could you clear the appetizer plates?" Eleanor called from the kitchen, like I was the hired help. I gathered the plates without comment. That's what I always did. The good daughter, the reliable one, the one who shows up early to help and stays late to clean. The one who never asked for anything, because asking meant lectures about entitlement, hard work, and pulling your own weight. My father built his construction business from nothing. He loves telling that story, single truck, toolbox, 18-hour days, sacrificing everything. What he conveniently leaves out is Eleanor's parents gave him the down payment for their first house, and her family connections landed him his first 3 major contracts. But sure, Dad, you did it all yourself. Truth is, I learned early that nothing in this family was free. When I was 16, I asked for help buying my first car. Robert sat me down, explaining handouts created weakness, that I needed to earn my own way. "Struggle builds character," he said. I worked 2 jobs through high school, bought a rusty Honda with my own money. Chloe? She got a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday because she needed reliable transportation for her extracurriculars. I could fill a book with these examples, the double standards, the excuses, the way my accomplishments were met with indifference while Chloe's mere breathing was celebrated. But I kept showing up, a stupid part of me hoping they'd finally see me. Christmas morning was cold and bright. We gathered around the tree, a tradition Eleanor insisted on, even though we were all adults. She loved the pageantry, the moment she played Lady Bountiful. Chloe went first, naturally. She tore open a small envelope and gasped with theatrical delight. "Rome? Mom, Dad, you're sending us to Rome? An all-expenses-paid trip for 2 weeks. 5-star hotels, business-class flights, a private tour of the Vatican." I did the mental math, easily $20,000 worth of vacation. "You've been working so hard with the charity board," Eleanor beamed. "You deserve a break." Chloe's charity board position was unpaid, required maybe 4 hours a month, and she got it through David's mother's connections. She spent most meetings scrolling on her phone. But sure, she deserved Rome. Evan opened his gift next. The Rolex caught the morning light, all gleaming steel and sapphire crystal. No way, he breathed, genuinely stunned for once. Dad, this is too much. Every successful man needs a good watch, Robert said, clapping him on the shoulder. You're going to do great things, son. I can feel it. Evan had been fired from 3 positions within Robert's company for incompetence before Robert created a made-up management title for him. The great things remained purely theoretical. Then it was my turn. Eleanor handed me a gift bag, the kind you get free with a department store purchase. Inside was a stack of coupons, yellowed, held together with a rubber band. I know how practical you are, Eleanor said. These should help with your grocery shopping. I looked at them. Most were expired. Some for brands I'd never buy. One was for cat food. I don't own a cat. Thanks, Mom, I managed. Well, you never really put in the effort, Eleanor added, her tone so casual, so matter-of-fact, I almost thought I'd misheard her. Excuse me? With a family, dear. Chloe hosts Easter every year. Evan always comes to Sunday dinners. But you're always too busy with work or that little apartment of yours. It's hard to shop for someone you barely see. I stared at her. The room went quiet. Even Evan looked uncomfortable. Chloe hosts Easter in the mansion her in-laws bought her, with caterers and a party planner. I couldn't afford to host in my 1-bedroom rental, which I paid for on an entry-level accountant's salary, chipping away at student loans with zero family help. I came to Sunday dinners for 3 years straight before Eleanor told me to stop because I was disrupting the dynamic by asking too many questions about the family business I was keeping the books for. The silence stretched. Chloe examined her manicure. David suddenly fascinated by his coffee cup. Evan at least had the decency to avoid eye contact. You're right, Mom, I finally said. And I laughed. Actually laughed. Because what else could I do? The absurdity of it all, the years of trying, the endless effort to prove I was worthy of basic respect, it all crystallized into something almost funny. I haven't been putting in the effort. Eleanor looked satisfied, as if she'd made a valid point. Robert nodded, already moving on, asking Evan about some football game. Chloe started planning her Rome wardrobe out loud. The conversation flowed around me like I wasn't even there. I stayed another hour, helping clean up. Old habits die hard. I washed dishes while Eleanor told me about the charity gala Chloe was organizing, how proud she was, how Chloe had such a gift for bringing people together. My hands moved mechanically through the soapy water, scrubbing plates, rinsing glasses, stacking everything with practiced efficiency. You know, Vivian, if you spend half as much time cultivating relationships as you do with those spreadsheets, you might have a life worth celebrating, Eleanor said, handing me another platter. It's not too late to try harder. Something inside me went very still. Very cold. Try harder. As if I hadn't been trying my entire life. As if every achievement I'd earned hadn't been met with indifference or criticism. As if I hadn't spent 34 years begging for scraps of approval from people who couldn't bother to remember my birthday without a social media reminder. I dried my hands on the kitchen towel, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. I need to get going, I said. Long drive home. Nobody protested. Nobody asked me to stay. Chloe waved distractedly from the living room, showing David Rome hotels on her tablet. Evan had fallen asleep on the couch, his new Rolex catching the light. Robert was in his study, probably on his 3rd whiskey. Eleanor walked me to the door, still talking about Chloe's accomplishments, barely pausing for breath. Drive safe, she said, kissing my cheek with the same enthusiasm she might show a casual acquaintance. The drive home usually took 45 minutes. I made it in 30, my mind racing through calculations. I'd spent 11 years as a certified public accountant, 9 running my own practice. I was good with numbers, excellent at finding patterns, and had a particular talent for forensic accounting that had served clients well during messy divorces. I'd also been doing my father's business books for free since I graduated college. Robert asked me to take over the accounting when his bookkeeper retired. Just temporarily, he'd said, until we find someone permanent. That was 2013. It was now 2024. I was still doing his books every month, reconciling accounts, filing taxes, catching errors that would have cost him thousands. Family helps family, he always said. But family was a one-way street that stopped at my doorstep. My apartment was dark and cold when I got home. I turned on every light, made coffee despite the late hour, and opened my laptop. The files I needed were all there, years of financial records, tax documents, bank statements, everything I'd meticulously tracked for Robert's construction business. I started reading, really reading, not just processing numbers, but looking for the story they told. And what a story it was. The thing about doing someone's books? You only see what they want you to see. For 11 years, I'd process what Robert fed me, invoices, receipts, bank statements from accounts he gave me access to. I reconciled what was in front of me, never thinking to dig deeper, because why would I suspect my own father of hiding things? But now, with clear eyes and a sharp edge of anger, I started cross-referencing everything. Public records, business registrations, property filings I'd never thought to examine. The first real irregularity, property records for the house I grew up in, the beautiful colonial where we just celebrated Christmas. My name was on the deed. Not as a cosigner, but as an actual part owner, 20% ownership specifically. I stared at the document, my coffee going cold. When had this happened? I dug through old files, searched my memory, and then I found it. When I was 22, fresh out of college, Robert had asked me to sign paperwork for what he called a family trust arrangement. He'd explained it as estate planning, a way to protect assets, standard stuff rich families do. I'd been young, trusting, and I'd signed where he told me. That signature had made me a legal partial owner of the house, with equity stake. The house was purchased for $300,000 in 1992. My grandmother's inheritance paid off the remaining mortgage in 2002. Then, in 2008, Robert took out a new mortgage for $400,000, supposedly for business expansion. I called my attorney first thing next morning. Well, it was 6 a.m., but Arthur Miller was an early riser and one of my oldest clients. I'd helped him navigate a complicated business acquisition 2 years ago. He owed me favors. "Vivian, it's the day after Christmas," he answered, voice rough with sleep. "I need to force a property sale," I said. "And I need to understand my rights as a partial owner." Arthur listened as I explained the property ownership, the mortgage situation, the years of being shut out of family decisions despite legally owning 20% of their home. His silence was thoughtful, calculating. "This is complicated," he said finally, "but very doable. As a 20% owner, you have the right to force a partition sale if the co-owners can't buy out your share. Since your parents are in financial trouble, they almost certainly can't buy you out. How does that work? You file a partition action with the court. Essentially, you're saying you want out of the co-ownership and you want your equity. If the other owners can't purchase your share at fair market value, the court orders the property sold and divides the proceeds according to ownership percentages. How long does that take? Usually 6 to 8 months. But given the property has a mortgage in default, and you can demonstrate financial harm from that default as a part owner, we might be able to expedite. 3 to 4 months if we push hard. My heart sank. Months. I wanted immediate impact. Consequences, not a slow legal process. However, Arthur continued, and I could hear the shift in his tone. "There's another option if you're willing to take a financial hit up front." "I'm listening." "The mortgage is in default. As a partial owner, you're technically liable. It affects your credit, too, though they probably haven't informed you. You could pay off the default amount, which protects your own financial standing. Then, with the default cleared, you immediately file for partition. Your parents would have two options: buy out your 20% at current market value within 30 days, or the house gets sold. No one wants to buy a house tied up in partition litigation. So, they'd be forced to accept your buyout terms or agree to list it quickly. We could have this resolved in weeks, not months, if you play it right. How much is the default? Let me make some calls. Give me 2 hours. I had $82,000 in savings. Money I'd carefully accumulated for years, living in a modest apartment, driving an old car, skipping vacations, saying no to everything that might bring me joy, because I was being responsible, practical, the good daughter who didn't ask for handouts. Do it, I said. Whatever paperwork needs filing, whatever motions, I want it done today. Vivian, it's the day after Christmas. Courts are closed. Then we do what we can today and file first thing tomorrow when they open. I want every document ready to go. Arthur paused. You understand this will destroy your relationship with your family? Arthur, I said. There's nothing there to destroy. The next several hours were a blur of document signing, notarizations, electronic funds transfers. Arthur had connections with a title company. Working through the holiday, I paid the $68,000 default, protecting my own credit as a partial owner. By 7 p.m. on December 26th, the mortgage was current again, and I had all the leverage. Arthur drafted the partition demand and formal buyout notice. He'd file everything the moment courts opened on December 27th. Simultaneously, he'd send my parents the ultimatum: buy out my 20% for $175,000 within 15 days, or agree to list the house immediately. I'm also retaining Sarah Jenkins, Arthur added. She's a real estate agent specializing in partition sales. The moment your parents refuse the buyout or the 15 days expire, she'll be ready to list immediately. They won't be able to buy me out, I said with certainty. Robert's business is barely solvent, and they've already defaulted. They have no liquid assets. They'll fight initially, then realize they have no choice. I estimated 2 to 3 weeks before the listing went live, maybe a month before it sold, depending on the market. It wasn't the instant gratification I'd fantasized about, but it was real, permanent, unstoppable. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch drinking coffee, watching the hours tick past, imagining the moment my family would discover what I'd done. Part of me felt sick with guilt, that deeply ingrained sense that good daughters don't rebel, don't cause trouble, don't rock the boat. But mostly, I felt calm, purposeful, like I'd been holding my breath for 34 years and finally remembered how to exhale. The court filing went through first thing December 27th. By 10 a.m., Arthur had sent the formal notices to my parents via certified mail and email. Partition action filed. Buyout demand for $175,000. 15-day deadline. I was at my office when my phone started ringing. Eleanor called first. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. By the fourth call, I answered. What the hell have you done? She screamed. I'd never heard her sound like that, unhinged and panicked. Good morning, I said. We just got papers from an attorney. You're trying to force us to sell our house. You can't do this. Actually, I can. I own 20% of it. You and Dad put my name on the deed when I was 22. Remember that family trust paperwork? Turns out it made me a legal owner. That was just for estate planning. You can't. I can. And I am. You have 15 days to buy out my share for $175,000, which is below market value for 20%. If you can't, we're selling the house and splitting the proceeds according to ownership. You'll get your 80% minus the remaining mortgage. This is our home. It's a piece of property that I legally own part of, and I want out. You can buy me out, or we can sell. Those are your options. Robert grabbed the phone. Vivian, this is insane. You're making a huge mistake. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm just exercising my legal rights as a property owner. We can't come up with that kind of money in 15 days. Then I guess we're selling. I've already retained a real estate agent, Sarah Jenkins. She'll be reaching out to coordinate once the 15 days are up, or sooner if you'd like to list voluntarily and avoid the court battle. You wouldn't do this. You're not that cruel. I'm not being cruel, Dad. I'm being practical. You taught me that, remember? Pull your own weight. No handouts. The silence on the other end was heavy with realization. I also paid off your mortgage default, I added. You're welcome. That was $68,000 I didn't have to spend, but I did it to protect my own credit since I'm a part owner. You might want to think about that when you're deciding whether to demonize me. Eleanor was crying in the background, dramatic sobs that probably would have made me feel guilty a week ago. Now they just sounded like noise. Vivian, please, Eleanor begged, taking the phone back. We can fix this. We can talk about this. You're upset about Christmas, I understand, but this is extreme. I'm not upset about Christmas, Mom. I'm done with all of it. The double standards, the disrespect, the decades of being invisible unless you needed something from me. Christmas was just the final confirmation of what I'd known for years. You have 15 days to figure it out. I hung up before she could respond. Chloe called 10 minutes later, furious and imperious. How dare you embarrass this family? Do you have any idea what people are saying? Mrs. Hartley from the club just called Mom asking if they're having financial troubles. They are having financial troubles, I said. They have been for years. They've just been very good at hiding it. This is vindictive and cruel, and it makes you look petty. Chloe, I'm exercising my legal rights as a property owner. If that looks petty to you, maybe examine why you think I should just accept being ignored and disrespected. You're jealous. You've always been jealous that I have a better life, and now you're trying to punish everyone for your own failures. I really don't think about you enough to be jealous. You have 15 days to help Mom and Dad come up with $175,000 if you care so much. Otherwise, the house sells. I hung up on her, too. Evan texted instead of calling. WTF, Vivian? Not cool. I didn't respond. The 15 days that followed were chaotic. My phone rang constantly. Aunt Susan called to tell me I was being unreasonable. Uncle Michael left voicemails about family loyalty. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my choices. Robert showed up at my office on day 3, causing a scene until building security escorted him out. He demanded I drop the partition action, claimed I was destroying the family, threatened to cut me out of his will, like I'd ever expected to be in it. Eleanor sent daily emails, each more desperate. Guilt, then anger, then bargaining. She even offered to host a family dinner to talk things through, as if a pot roast could undo 34 years of neglect. Chloe tried a different approach. On day 7, she sent a long text about how Mom had been crying every day, how Dad's health was suffering, how could I be so heartless? I replied with a simple question, can you help them come up with $175,000? She didn't respond. On day 12, Arthur called. They consulted an attorney. He told them exactly what I told you. They have no legal leg to stand on. They either buy you out, or the property sells. Their lawyer advised them to list voluntarily to avoid additional legal fees. Have they agreed? Not yet. They're still hoping you'll back down, but their deadline is in 3 days, and they're running out of options. On day 14, Eleanor called me directly. Her voice was different this time, smaller, defeated. We can't buy you out, she said quietly. We don't have the money. Robert's business is struggling, and we don't qualify for another loan. Then we list the house. Vivian, please give us more time. Maybe 6 months? No. The deadline is tomorrow. Either agree to list it now, or I proceed with the partition suit and the court forces the sale anyway. Your choice. But either way, it's happening. She was quiet for a long moment. How did it come to this? You really don't know, do you? I said, feeling something close to pity. It came to this because you spent my entire life showing me I didn't matter. Christmas was just the most blatant example of something that's been true forever. We gave you life, a home, an education. You gave me the bare minimum while showering Chloe and Evan with everything. You made me feel like I had to earn love while they got it for free. And when I finally stopped trying, you didn't even notice. She hung up without saying goodbye. The next morning, day 15, Arthur received a signed agreement. My parents would list the house voluntarily. Sarah Jenkins had already prepared marketing materials and pre-screened several potential buyers. The listing went live on January 12th, exactly 2 weeks after the Christmas that changed everything. The house was priced at $825,000, market rate. Within 4 days, multiple offers. Within a week, they'd accepted an offer for $815,000 from a family relocating from Florida. The closing took 6 weeks. My parents had to pack up 32 years of their lives and find somewhere else to live. They ended up renting a 2-bedroom condo in a less expensive suburb, something they could actually afford on Robert's diminished income. I didn't help them move. I didn't call to check in. I simply waited for the closing paperwork and the wire transfer for my share. When the dust settled, after the mortgage was paid off, closing costs deducted, and various fees handled, the net proceeds were $495,000. My 20% came to $99,000. After repaying myself the $68,000 I'd spent clearing the default, I was left with $31,000 in profit. Not life-changing money, but enough to rebuild my savings and then some. My parents received $396,000, which sounds like a lot until you realize they had to find new housing, move their entire lives, and face the reality that they'd squandered decades of equity on maintaining appearances. None of it moved me. I didn't attend the closing. Arthur handled everything remotely. I received an email notification that the funds had been transferred, and that was that. The house I'd grown up in, the place that held every memory of feeling inadequate and invisible, belonged to someone else now. A young family with 2 kids and a dog, people who would probably fill it with actual love and laughter instead of performative perfection and conditional approval. Chloe sent me one final text after the closing, "I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family." I responded, "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending it existed." She blocked my number. Evan never reached out at all, which was somehow perfect. Even in a family crisis, he couldn't be bothered. Robert sent a letter, actual pen on paper, delivered to my office. Full of hurt and accusation, talking about betrayal, how he'd given me opportunities, and this was how I repaid him. He never once acknowledged the years of free accounting work, the missed mortgage payments, the defaulted loan that had damaged my credit before I fixed it. I didn't respond. Eleanor tried a different approach about 2 months after the sale. She called from a number I didn't recognize, and I answered before I realized it was her. "I've been in therapy," she said. No greeting, no preamble. "My therapist says I need to understand your perspective." "Okay," I said cautiously. She says, "Maybe I showed favoritism. Maybe I didn't validate you enough. Maybe I was too hard on you while being too easy on your siblings. Maybe." "I'm trying, Vivian. I'm trying to understand how we got here. Mom, you gave me expired coupons for Christmas while giving Chloe a trip to Rome and Evan a Rolex. You told me I never put in the effort when I've been doing Dad's accounting for free for 11 years, when I've shown up to every family event, when I've spent my entire life trying to earn a fraction of the love you gave them without them even asking. It wasn't supposed to feel like that, she said, sounding genuinely confused. Chloe needed more support because she's sensitive. Evan needed more help because he's still finding his way. You were always so capable, so independent. You didn't seem to need us. I didn't need you because you taught me I couldn't rely on you. There's a difference. She was quiet for a long time. Your therapist said that? No, Mom. That's just the truth. I learned to be independent because depending on you meant disappointment. And eventually, I realized I was better off alone. Is that what you want? To be alone? I want to be valued. I want to be treated like I matter. If I can't have that from my family, then yes, I prefer being alone. She hung up without saying goodbye, just like last time. Some patterns never break. It's been 8 months since that Christmas dinner. 8 months since I laughed at expired coupons and decided I was done. 8 months since I filed a partition action that changed everything. I haven't spoken to any of them since Eleanor's therapy-prompted phone call. No texts, no emails, no awkward encounters. They moved to a suburb 40 minutes away. Far enough that I don't risk running into them. My life is quieter now, simpler. I work with clients who appreciate my expertise and pay me what I'm worth. I took a long weekend trip to the coast, something I'd put off for years, saving money. I bought myself a new laptop without calculating if I really needed it or if I could make the old one last. Small things, but they feel revolutionary. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. Friends who knew my family, colleagues who heard the story through the grapevine. They ask if I feel guilty, if I wish I'd handled it differently, if I think about reconciliation. The honest answer is no, not even a little bit. I don't regret forcing the sale of that house. I don't feel guilty about exercising my legal rights as a property owner. I don't lie awake at night wondering if I was too harsh or too hasty. What I feel is free. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not waiting for my family to see me, to value me, to treat me like I matter. I'm not performing for approval I'll never receive. I'm not contorting myself into shapes that might finally be acceptable enough. I'm just living. And it turns out living for yourself is a lot more satisfying than living for people who don't actually care about you. Do I miss having a family? Sometimes I see other people with their parents, their siblings, their holiday gatherings full of genuine warmth. And there's a small part of me wanting that. But I don't miss my family. I miss the idea of what a family should be, which is something I never actually had. Chloe is probably still hosting perfect Easter brunches. Evan is probably still collecting paychecks for minimal work. Robert and Eleanor are probably still maintaining whatever illusion they can afford from their rented condo, telling people about their successful children, conveniently editing me out entirely. And I'm here, in my one-bedroom apartment with my second-hand furniture and my growing savings account, finally building a life that's actually mine. The other day, I got a wedding invitation, a college friend I haven't seen in years. Someone who knew me before I fully understood how dysfunctional my family was. The invitation included a +1. I'm going alone, and I'm okay with that. Because here's what I've learned, being alone is better than being surrounded by people who make you feel alone. Cutting ties is better than holding onto a rope that's only ever been used to pull you down. Walking away is better than staying in a room where nobody notices whether you're there or not. That Christmas morning, when I opened a bag of expired coupons and heard my mother tell me I never put in the effort, something broke in me. But it wasn't a bad breaking. It was the kind of breaking that lets the light in. That creates space for something new to grow. I didn't destroy my family by forcing the sale of that house. I destroyed the illusion that we were a family at all. And in the rubble of that illusion, I found something much more valuable, myself. So, no, I don't regret it. Not the partition action, not the legal fees, not the burned bridges or the angry voicemails or the relatives who think I'm cruel. I regret the years I wasted trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. I regret the opportunities one missed because I was too busy being the good daughter who didn't ask for anything. I regret every time I made myself smaller to make them more comfortable. But forcing them to sell that house? That's the one thing I did that I'm actually proud of. They're probably telling a different version of this story. The ungrateful daughter who threw a tantrum over Christmas gifts and destroyed her parents' lives out of spite. The vindictive sister who couldn't handle not being the favorite. The cold-hearted accountant who valued money over family. Let them tell that story. Let them believe it. Let them rewrite history to make themselves the victims. I know the truth. And more importantly, I'm finally free from needing them to know it, too. The house sold 8 months ago, but I'd been selling it in my mind for 34 years. Every disappointment, every dismissal, every moment of being overlooked and undervalued was another brick in the wall I was building between us. Christmas dinner didn't create that wall. It just made me finally willing to admit it existed. And then I walked through it and never looked back. Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you were born into?